reflective, wholehearted, purposeful.
Hi out there, this is Heather Vickery, and you've tuned into the Brave Files podcast. Welcome. What if I told you that your stress could be the pathway to incredible self-awareness, self-love, and even success? Well, as a young woman, today's guest, Stephanie Weikert, experienced such tremendous anxiety that she literally pulled out her eyelashes and her eyebrows. But the story changed at some point because eventually, Stephanie realized that she did not want the life that she was living, and she knew that there had to be some way out. After a lot of hard work and a lot of creativity, Stephanie figured out how to use her stress as an opportunity to focus her attention on what she wants to think, feel, and do, rather than resisting what's happening. So much of stress is about resisting the truth and placing shame and judgment. This episode is really about seeing yourself without that judgment and shame. It's about realizing that you can stay miserable or you can take ownership and create change. You have choice. The thing is, folks, you can change your relationship with stress, just like you change your relationship with fear. My friends, when you flourish, so many other people benefit. And I want that for you, brave one. So let's get started, because today is the first day of the rest of your life, and I'm excited to be on the journey with you. You're listening to The Brave Files, where we share stories from people who've stepped out of fear and into bravery in every possible way. What we know for sure is that when we choose bravely on purpose, we choose bigger, we win bigger, and it's contagious. It's our hope that these stories connect with you and encourage you to embrace bravery in every possible way, day after day. Together, we can build a movement that enriches both our lives and our communities. The Brave Files is brought to you by Vickery & Co., a success and leadership coaching firm dedicated to helping you build a life and a business that you are absolutely in love with. Vickery & Co. offers group programs, membership communities, one-on-one coaching, VIP days, corporate trainings, workshops, keynote speaking, and so much more. Visit vickeryandco.com to get all the details. Imagine using stress as an opportunity to focus your attention and energy on what you actually want to feel, think, and do, as opposed to resisting what's happening. Well, today's guest has figured that out. As a young woman, her anxiety had her literally pulling out her eyelashes and her eyebrows. And now she uses a method that she's created called Make Peace with Stress to support herself in all of the ways. And she shares this simple, practical, and transformative method with as many women as possible so that they can stop struggling and start flourishing. I'm so excited to introduce you all to Stephanie Weikert. Stephanie, welcome to the Brave Files.
Thanks for having me, Heather. I'm really excited for our conversation.
I am too. I have to fully confess. So for those of you who don't already know this, before I have a guest on the show, I do a pre-call with everyone because I want to make sure you guys as listeners are getting a new story, something that's going to light you up and inspire you and connect. And I had this great conversation with Stephanie. I can't believe I'm outing myself on this, but I have to do it, and I have to do it right away. At the time, our puppy was really little, and the approach to getting him to stop biting was to yelp when he barked. So I'm on the phone with Stephanie, and I keep muting you, Stephanie, and barking at my dog. And then I do it this one time and I go to unmute you only to discover that I hadn't muted you. So I kind of very casually said, did you just hear me bark? Do you remember what you said? You said, yes, but I thought you were just cheering me on.
That's true. I did. I assumed I had said something amazing.
Oh my gosh. I mean, it was a real yelp. If you guys want to hear it, I'm not going to do it for you right now, but I did reenact it on TikTok. So if you want to go You'll have to find me at Brave Heather on TikTok, and you can hear it was hilarious, and I still am humiliated, but you were so graceful about it, Stephanie. So thank you for not holding my barking against me.
Of course. That's great. It was fun. It was a lot of fun.
Oh my goodness, it's so silly. Well, I'm really excited to have you here. We've done several episodes on anxiety and depression, and I am committed to bringing new stories every week. And we bring this one back because so many people experience different things and approach their depression and anxiety and OCD in different ways. And anytime we can bring a new approach to the table that might support a listener, I am here for it. So I'd love to have you kind of tell us your story from the beginning. We'll have a great conversation about it, but fill us in on this version of you that was literally pulling out her eyelashes and her eyebrows.
Yeah. I mean, I at the time thought it was just sort of normal young adult challenges, living on my own for the first time and juggling, all the things that
Mhm.
relate to that. My parents were in the middle of a divorce after, 20 some years. And, life just felt hard and struggling just felt normal. I thought it
Oh,
was
man.
just the way life was, at the time.
And I mean, to
Um,
some degree, struggling is normal, but then where does it cross that line to being abnormal? Too much.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I would wake up with a sense of dread every day
Mm,
and, just try to get through the day. And what you mentioned about pulling on my eyebrows or eyelashes was, I look back at it now and I realize, like, oh, it was just a nervous habit, a coping
mhm.
mechanism, but it was very non-conscious. I didn't realize
Yeah.
I was doing it. And the experience that really changed my life was just seeing myself in the mirror one day. And I think back about it, and it really was a sense of I was seeing myself for the first time. It's almost like
Mm.
an out of body experience, right? Me looking at myself in the mirror. And I just had this little voice inside of me that said, so you can either stay the same as you are now and continue to struggle and be unhappy and have life be hard and uncomfortable all the time, or you can take ownership of your experience and change something. And every time I say that, I feel compelled to sort of apologize. That, of course,
Mm.
that's so obvious and it's so simple. But I recognize now, looking back, that that's the genius of it. That's the real wisdom of it, is that when we are in this constant state of struggle, we get used to it. We think that that's
Yeah.
just how it is. And we forget that we have a choice. And also, I think that we get into patterns of making things more complicated than they actually are. So that
Yes.
sort of very clear fork in the road, stay the same, stay stuck, continue on this way, or change something is it can be very liberating, right? To say, oh, well, obviously I don't want this, so I have to change
Mm.
something. And then the question is just what and how, and going forward from there. So at the time, that really changed everything for me because I was in the soup of chronic stress and the resulting anxiety and depression and that, self-destructive habits, numbing, all of that, and having that sort of line in the sand. It's either this or something different, and the something different means that you have to do something different. Was just a really clear message from, God, the universe, inner wisdom, whatever you want to call it. It really sort of cut through for me.
I really like that when you say it's either this or something different, but you have to do the something different.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
I really like
Yeah.
that.
Take ownership.
So, how old were you when you had that moment in the mirror?
About 27.
Okay. So, is there something do you think so I one of my children picks her skin.
Mhm.
I think that's probably the very and she says, I don't know I'm doing it, but I know she's damaging her skin." And I she looks in the mirror and I don't know how she doesn't go, "Why am I doing this to myself?" But somehow she can't help it. But she's 15. And there's a big difference in being 15 and being 27. How much of, like, life experience do you think I mean, it's unfortunate that it took that long for you to reach that point, but is there something in that, you think, where you've gained some life experience and knowledge and you go, "Oh, now I'm gonna choose differently."
Well, I started pulling on my eyebrows and eyelashes when I was 17 or even 16.
Yeah.
So it was a long, long journey before I sort of had that moment. And I really feel like that understanding that yes, there was the long journey, right, of going through 10, 12 years of of struggling before I hit rock bottom or hit the
Yeah.
wall, so to speak. And also, I never got the message that I could do something about it. I got the
Mm,
message, why are you doing this? Right? More of a shaming or a blaming, or, and so I would encourage you to
that's
encourage your
fascinating. Yeah.
daughter to recognize that even though she's not fully aware of that she's doing it, if she starts to pay attention, if she
Mhm.
specifically starts to notice when she's doing it, and that's the first step in the Make Peace with Stress method, self study,
Awareness.
awareness,
Jeez. Yeah, same
then
for the
at
brave
that
method.
moment, that's right, that's right. And then at that
Yeah.
moment, she has that choice. Keep
Mm,
doing it, stay the same, stay stuck, let that keep perpetuating itself,
yeah.
or do something different. And back to the story, that's exactly what I started to do after that moment in the mirror is I decided, okay, I'm going to stop pulling on my eyebrows and eyelashes because I didn't have any, but I still sort of did like what your daughter's doing, like picking, feeling. And when I started to pay attention
Mhm.
specifically to that one thing, that and give myself that opportunity to say, oh, okay, in this moment that I'm doing it, I can practice stopping myself, and then that's what will create the momentum to
Mhm.
change that.
So how does one do that? I mean, it it sounds simple. I always say the same thing about my work is these are all really simple concepts, but that doesn't make them easy. Simple is not easy. And if you do something subconsciously, how do you begin to create awareness in this space? I do it, when with my clients and with myself with negative self-talk, but that one feels a little bit easier to like if you're talking shit about yourself to yourself and you go, "Wait, come on, Heather. You're not really fat. You don't look like an old lady. Be nice to yourself. What's the opposite of that?" You can kind of talk yourself through that. If you're consciously or subconsciously and unconsciously picking at yourself, how do you decide to be aware?
Yeah, well, I think that do some things to identify the patterns that are sabotaging yourself
Okay.
or that are perpetuating stress. And, there's tons of ways to learn about yourself, to start paying attention to, like I said, the first method or the first step in the Make Peace with Stress method is self-study. And
Mm,
it's, mindfulness. It's about starting to notice things about yourself without judgment to simply
mm,
increase your awareness. And I think and you mentioned the self-talk. I have worked with plenty of people that don't fully realize that they're talking shit to themselves until they have a glimmer of it, and then purposefully decide, okay, now I'm going to really pay attention to this. And your brain is so fascinating. Our brains are so, so fascinating
Absolutely.
because when you clarify something like that, like, oh, this is what I do, and now I'm going to start to really watch for myself to do that. Your brain rearranges itself to highlight that, to really
That's
become
true.
aware of that,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, we see it in ways that don't feel so important. You get a new car and all of a sudden you see your car everywhere, or you get
That's right.
pregnant and all of a sudden you see pregnant women everywhere, right? It's
Yep.
because we're aware
Yep.
now and we see
Yep.
it.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Well, so can you take us through the method? And then I'd love to hear all of the different ways that you've used it because we have stress. Like we are human beings, just like, my book out is called Fuck Fearless. We aren't fearless. We aren't fearless by nature.
Oh.
And fear is the only thing that enables bravery. And so, we're going to feel stress. We're going to be anxious. So I'd love to hear different ways that you've applied it and get some real life examples. But let's hear the method.
Okay, well, first, I just want to say I love your book
Thank
because it
you.
has the same vibe as Make Peace with Stress, which is that stress is part of life and
Yeah.
fear is part of life. And it's just about changing your relationship to it, right? That's why my
Yes.
method, my program is called Make Peace with Stress, because we are taught that stress is bad. Stress is bad for your health. It causes heart attacks and cardiovascular disease, and it's going to ruin you. And the fact of the matter is that when you think that, you perpetuate it, right? You're in a
Yep.
challenging part of your life, and you feel stress. And I use stress sort of as an umbrella term. There's so much that falls under that, in terms of our physiological
Yeah.
reactions, but also our mental ways of judging and labeling and handling things. But when we think that that's bad, when we think that that's a bad thing, we perpetuate it.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
when you start to recognize that, like fear, your stress response is purposeful, it's there to help you survive. And if you really start to embrace it, it's there to help you thrive. It's there to show you when something is out of alignment with your ability to flourish. And
Mm.
most often in our modern day society, it's right between your ears. It's the
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
It's not a saber-toothed tiger anymore, but it's your way of thinking like, this is the end of the world, for whatever, this is
Mhm.
gonna ruin everything, or this is, whatever, your way of thinking about things are. I can't handle this. That's a huge one. I'm not good enough
Right.
for this.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I'm failing. I'm ruining my kids. I'll never
Oh,
keep
Lord.
up.
I
All of
feel
these
that
things.
lately.
Right. Yeah.
It's one of the things I wanted to ask you about, but we'll get there later. My very first coach used to say, "All fear lives in the future. Unless there's a bear chasing you at this moment, the thing you're afraid of isn't happening to you right now."
Yes. And well, yes, although
But
like what
stress
if
is a
you're
little
about to
different, I
step
think.
on
Yeah.
stage, right, to speak to people, and it's something that, you're not comfortable with, and
Yeah.
so you're standing, on the sidelines getting ready to walk out, and your face gets red and you start sweating and your heart starts beating. And what you say to yourself
Absolutely.
in those moments make a huge difference in the
Makes a
way
huge
your
difference.
body uses that.
Well, because
Say,
still
I'm
that fear
afraid.
is in the future, right? Like you're standing on the back of the
Mm,
stage and you're getting ready, but what you're afraid of is what? That you'll screw up, that they'll hate you, that you won't do a good
right,
job. Those things haven't happened yet.
right,
And
right.
they
The
may and
story.
what you
Good
say
point.
to yourself in those moments will decide whether or not those things are going to happen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's go back to the make peace with stress method because it's super applicable in all situations, and that's a good one. First off, I want to say that I'm a certified yoga therapist, and the method is based in the time tested wisdom of yoga. I also feel compelled to say that yoga is way more than sun salutations and stretch pants on a mat. It's a whole system that includes, tools and breathing techniques and physical
Hmm.
practice. Meditation is under the umbrella of yoga,
Yeah.
and a lot more. I feel just compelled to share that. At the time that I started using this practice, I didn't know it was yoga, and then when I discovered that it was yoga, I was like, that's what I'm doing with my life. But the make peace with stress method is self-study, or another way to think about it is noticing. The second step is surrender, or
Mm,
another way to think about it is opening. And then the third step is intention. Or
mm,
if you'd like to think about it like this, welcoming, welcoming what you want.
mm. I love all of those, and you're right, they're very aligned with what I do with the Brave method. That surrender has been, holy moly, like, it was not my word of the year, but it maybe should have been my word of the year, because I have been
Yeah.
in a lot of surrender space. So talk us through them. I mean, we've kind of talked about self-study. If you
Yeah.
have more to add, please do, but talk us through the 3 and what you mean when you say them, and how can we quickly start apply. I mean, you've got lots of ways folks can be trained on this, but there's gotta be some quick start. Do these one little things. I'd love to hear.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I even though I like to share the yogic practices of self-study, surrender, and intention, I also really teach them as a quick start way of noticing, opening, and welcoming. And you can think about that as an acronym, NOW, now, because that's when you do it. You can't go back and relive situations from the past. You can't go forward and figure things out that haven't happened yet. You have to use the method now, and you can use it as a super quick mental practice. What am I noticing about myself, and specifically, what am I noticing that is resistant, uncomfortable, not in alignment, out of sorts,
Yeah.
stress. We in make peace with stress, we really study the symptoms of chronic stress so that we can start to
Mm,
pay attention specifically to those, like what we talked about with your daughter is
yeah.
becoming more and more aware of when she's doing that, so that she can go to step 2,
Yeah.
surrender or opening. And the I think of surrender, surrender often has a negative connotation, but really
Mm-mm.
it's giving up the fight. Right? And it's so
Yeah.
in line with the stress response, because the stress response is often thought of as fight, flight, or freeze. But surrender is just giving up the fight and opening to that moment as the opportunity that you have to be intentional, to
Mhm.
really
Mhm.
focus on what you do want. So, back when I started working with pulling on my eyebrows and eyelashes, I would notice that I was doing that. I would bend over, oftentimes just sitting in a chair, at my desk or whatever, bend over. Sometimes I'd put my butt up against the wall. If I was in public, I'd often go into a bathroom and,
Mm.
sit on the
Yeah.
toilet and take a few slow breaths. And that can really be thought of as the surrender piece, like just
Yeah.
releasing into the moment. And then I would talk to myself and say, at first, it started off as, you can stop yourself. You can stop yourself from doing that. You can stop. You can stop now.
Mhm.
You can stop.
Mhm.
And because that's what I wanted at first. That's what I was really first trying to do, is stop pulling on my eyebrows and eyelashes. And as this method took hold in my life and became a force for personal growth and positive changes in my life, that inner dialogues, shifted to, you know, you're calm. You can be calm. Be calm. Be calm. Approach this from a place of calm,
Mm.
or be brave, or whatever.
Sure.
In a quick moment, standing on the sidelines of getting ready to go out on stage.
Mhm.
Just trust yourself, or whatever it is you need. And what's beautiful about that is that as you use that method, as you use it and continually pay attention and open to your opportunity to be intentional, you get more and more aware of what it is you really do want and need. And just
Yes.
like we said earlier about your brain,
Yeah.
there's a part of your brain, the reticular activating system, that really weeds out the things that aren't in your focus, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And so as you focus more and more on what you want to feel, what you want to think, what you want to be, what you want to do, these things get more energy and attention in your life. And
Yeah.
so they are more likely to come to fruition for you in that
Absolutely.
moment,
Yeah.
and in a bigger way in general.
I love that. I mean, thoughts become things, and
Exactly.
it's a little metaphysical, folks. It's a little woo-woo, I get it, but the study of quantum physics shows you that that actually is a real thing, and it sounds, you know, unapproachable, but it's really not. One of my favorite books on that. Have you read A Happy Pocket Full of Money?
No.
It's a great book. It is not really about money, although it is. Essentially, he says, money, like everything else, is a construct. It only has value because we've decided that it has value. So it's really just about creating wealth and abundance in all of the ways. But he teaches some quantum physics in a really approachable, understandable way, and it's lovely. Highly recommend it.
Yeah.
Surrender for me has been this exercise, and you said it, in learning to trust myself, but also trust the universe. Like, I'm giving up the how. I'm not going to spend my time and energy worrying about how I'm going to stop picking my eyebrows and eyelashes or whatever it is. I'm just going to release into this moment and set an intention. I love that, for what it is that I want to create, and then live into that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So
beautiful.
good. Yeah, it's so good. I meet so many women who just, we talked about struggling earlier, that
Mhm.
they're just struggling because they're resisting and fighting everything on some level. And often it's ourselves, it's something inside of ourselves, right?
Yeah, it is.
That we're really fighting. And when we're fighting ourselves, that's what our life is. That's what our life looks
Yeah.
like, is that everything, it projects out.
I would say the one common thread, though, that if you're listening to this and this is resonating for you, and I hope that it is, none of this works unless you decide you're ready for it to work.
So
And that
true.
is a really hard truth, I think. I have a colleague who just has fully said, I don't want to forgive. I don't want to move on. I don't want to get better. I just want to be pissed. Well, then you will. Right. And so
Yep.
until you have some sort of moment that says, oh, wait, that isn't what I want, it doesn't work. But once you've decided you're willing to try, or you're willing to believe in the possibility of something different. What is possible if I gave this a try, and not have specific expectations, but just believe that something different can be your truth? Then you can really kick ass with something like this.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
true, and such a great point, because, who is it that said, whether you think you can or you think you can't? Is it Henry Ford? You're
you're right.
right.
I'm pretty sure it was Ford. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So, can you quickly share some different ways that you have utilized make peace with stress, or now whatever you want to refer to it as, to make m- major changes in your life?
Yeah, so, besides stopping pulling on my eyebrows and
Yeah, which is
eyelashes,
pretty
and what
major.
that yeah, which was pretty major for sure at the time, that just really taught me that I could, take ownership of myself, and it opened the door to really just starting to pay attention. I had melanoma
Mm.
which felt so big and so scary and so unexpected. And I just really used the same, paying attention to the stories I was telling myself and trusting that whatever I would experience through it was purposeful. And and I had to really change my relationship with the sun, which was more challenging than the melanoma itself.
I'll bet because
And
I love the sun. I'm like a
me
plant. I just wanna be
too.
in it to grow.
Same, same, absolutely same. I through parenting teenagers, and specifically
Okay.
my daughter, who is now almost 18 and getting ready to go off to college, but she
And she
had a
doesn't
couple
hate
of.
you?
She doesn't. It's
Wow, you
she did
win.
for a while. She did for a while, but that was another example of just really continuing to pay attention to my own inner experience and to work with that so that I could show up for her in the way that I wanted to, despite the fact that she was not showing up in the way that I wanted her to at all.
I would
So
love to have you expand on that, maybe possibly because I'm going through that.
yeah,
I don't know, but
yeah.
also I think listeners could. Like, what does that look like? When your teenager
So
is an asshole, right? Like they are
yes.
cranky, they stomp around, they don't wanna listen to you, they think you're stupid.
Yep.
Uh, they're just it's not pleasant. What do you
Yeah.
do?
Well, I think for me it was that a lot of what she was going through felt triggering to me. I saw
Mhm.
her experiencing the things that I experienced when I was her age, and how I didn't handle them well, and how
Mhm.
it sent me into, a lot of mental health
So you're
issues.
worried. I mean, as a
So
parents,
it
we
was
see that and we worry.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And so recognizing that, and then the opening piece was really about, like, it's okay to be worried. You're worried because you care,
Mhm.
and you care because you want what's best. But what is best? Is it best for me to try to control her behavior and teach
Yeah.
her that someone outside of herself knows better? Is that really what I want to
It
teach my, blossoming adult daughter?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
So just continually paying attention, and letting go of the resistance that we have to that experience, right? We suffer when we want things to be different than what they are.
Mm.
And so when we start to allow things as they are to be, and just clarify for ourselves the way we will be in alignment or integrity in that moment, what we really want to do, then we feel better and we can
Mm.
show up in the way that is right for us. And that has a trickle effect. Not immediately, not necessarily, doesn't mean that your
Yeah.
teenage daughter is all of a sudden going to be like, oh my gosh, mom, you're setting such a great example. I think I'll manage my nervous system the same way you're doing right now. No,
My daughter
no.
literally hates the word brave right now. She
Yeah.
hates it. She's like, "It's a dumb
Yeah.
word. I don't wanna be brave." Okay. Alright.
Right,
Okay.
right. Yeah, it's a challenging time. I mean, hormones and
Mm.
life is really confusing. And at that time, right? You're trying to
Yeah.
figure out who you are, and you got a lot of outside influences. So for me, I came up with a mantra for myself and for my daughter that she hated at the time, but now she repeats it back to me, which is that I'm always there for you. I will always tell you the truth,
Mm.
and I will never judge you.
I love
I'll
that.
never judge you, right? And I started understanding that back in her, 15 year
Oh,
old,
good for
13 to
you.
15-year-old self, when I was practicing the Make Peace with Stress method, to say, what do I want? What do I
Yeah.
want? Not for her, not for the outward
Yeah.
situation, but for me here. How do I want to show up as her parent? I want her to, I want to show her that I'm here. I'm not going anywhere, right?
Yeah.
She can do whatever it is that she needs to do, and I'm still here. And I'm not judging, and I'm honest. I'm
I
telling the
love
truth.
that. It sort of
Um,
feels like the, oxygen mask effect analogy
so
at
true.
work,
Yeah, it's
right?
so true. Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
And I saw this thing once that stuck with me, and it's about, get how much I think women and mothers really are givers. That's a generalization. I acknowledge that, but we tend
But
to
it's pretty
have
accurate.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah, we tend to have this giving.
Yeah.
We want to help, we want to give, we want to give. And when we do that, from when we give of ourselves so much, we can very easily get depleted and, get to a place where we don't have anything left to give, or we're giving from being less than full, so to speak.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when we focus on what we need and what we want for ourselves first, it sounds really selfish. And I know that there will be people who hear this and are like, what are you talking about? That is not
No, it's
okay.
totally important.
But
Yeah.
when we fill ourselves up first, ultimately we are giving from our overflow and not depleting ourselves. And our overflow is generous and delicious. And when we really keep filling ourselves up, when we really keep checking in with ourselves first, not only are we showing up in the way that we want to intentionally, purposefully, but we do really set examples for those around us. And I'm specifically thinking of our teenage daughters.
Mhm.
That
Mhm.
giving to yourself and what you need first is
Yeah.
really key, because in those moments where they're really struggling and confused, and it's hard to narrow anything down, the gift of just
Yeah.
checking in, feeling, what do you need right now? What
I
do you
love that.
need? Even if the answer doesn't come, asking the question is huge.
It really is. I mean, that's a gift, taking the time to ask the question, and if you don't know the answer, then going, "Okay, how can I figure it out?" That's
That's
such a
right.
gift. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that. This seems like a nice transition into, because that is, there's so much in that, in in recognizing the power of that and choosing to step into the power of that. To me, that's one of the ways we can empower ourselves, and anybody who's been around me long enough knows that empowerment is an inside job. No one gives it to you. You're the only one
Right.
that can empower yourself, and that is a lot to celebrate. And so I'd love to find out from you, Stephanie, what are the different ways that you like to celebrate those successes or those moments that feel good, big or small?
Oh, it's a great question. And at this point in my life, the answer is giving myself credit.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah, that's really a huge shift and a big celebration.
Mm,
You asked me the ways in which had applied the make peace with stress method in my life, and we got sort of stuck on the teenagers. That I'll just quickly go back to. I got sober, after just really having to admit to myself that I was abusing cannabis and alcohol,
mm.
and I also in my mid 40s acknowledged to myself that I'm gay, and
Oh,
left a
hey, me
20-year
too.
yeah, I know. That's actually how I first learned about you, but that's another story for another day. But I so giving myself credit for you know the wins,
Mm,
the times when I chose growth over
yeah,
safety, perceived safety, perceived comfort. And I say it that
sure.
way specifically because there was nothing comfortable or even really safe
Mm-mm,
about
mm-mm.
being closeted in a marriage, and a whole life that was not in alignment with my truth.
Yeah. Oh, man, I feel all of that. I remember those terrifying moment I that was when I lived my best fear-based life. right? Like, oh,
Yeah.
I can't, I don't want to hurt this person. I don't want to try that. What's the least risky thing? I'm sure you felt
Yeah.
all of that. So what we thought was safe was so harmful.
Yeah.
I love that,
Truly.
celebrating by giving yourself credit for, like, the shit
Yeah.
you've done, man, right? Like,
That's
I
right.
did this.
Yeah. And we
I'm a
talked
badass.
earlier about our brains and how,
Yeah.
those things, the way that we think about things really affect what we see and how we label and judge
Mm.
and perceive ourselves and the world. So giving ourselves credit is it's good to do, and also it changes our brains to help us feel more brave, to help us feel more courageous, to help us recognize that. And this is what the Make Peace with Stress method really did for me in the beginning. Recognize that I could take ownership and just let that
Yeah.
be,
A truth.
enough and the truth.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. That's absolutely beautiful, and I've never had anyone give that answer to the celebration question, which
Wow.
brings me a lot of joy because I want people to hear this and recognize that there are so many little ways to acknowledge and celebrate and bring more gratitude and things to celebrate into their lives, so this is just
Yeah.
wonderful. What is your favorite charitable organization to support?
It's definitely, without a shadow of a doubt, One Tree Planted. I love this organization because they just really focus on planting as many trees as possible all over the world. But I specifically love trees because I feel that women, in a lot of ways, are like trees. We have the
Mm,
roots, in our families' histories, in our sort of the elders and ancient wisdom. And also, we branch out, right? When women flourish, so many people benefit. And
mm,
trees are like that, right? When trees flourish, there's massive benefit to the ecosystem, to oxygen, to the quality of the soil, to all the beings that live in trees and that need trees. There's just such a far-reaching positive effect to trees and to flourishing women. So it feels really in alignment with my work.
I love that. That's beautiful. So they'll be our charity of the week. We'll give them some love. And folks, if you're listening, we'd ask you to do the same, whatever that means for you in this moment. Stephanie, will you share your 3 words with us one last time?
I would love to. Reflective, wholehearted, and purposeful.
Mm, those are lovely, lovely words. I often come to the end of the conversation and say, tell me why you picked that word. But I don't feel like we need to do that today. These are lovely. So much of the work that you've shared and that you're doing and you're helping other people do is about that reflection piece. And for those of you who don't already know this, reflection is a part of my Brave method as well. It's one of the 3 R's. And so I love that. And I can just feel your heart. I can just feel it
Mm,
through the conversation. You're listening, folks. You can't see Stephanie's lovely face, and I can, but you just glow. And you can just tell that everything you're sharing comes from such a deep seated, soul centered, wholehearted place. So
thank you.
lucky to have you out in the world sharing this and doing this work, and it does feel purposeful.
Yeah,
Yeah. Oh my goodness, that's lovely.
thank you.
Stephanie, can you tell folks how to reach you, how to connect, if they wanna know more or they would like to work with you, how can they do that?
Yeah, makepeacewithstress.com. Got a blog full of podcast interviews and ways to apply the Make Peace with Stress method to things in your life like procrastination and insomnia and all of that. And I work with individuals one on one, and I have a group program that right now is specifically for women entrepreneurs who are mothers and overwhelmed with juggling all of that.
I love it. Thank you.
My pleasure.
So we will put that in the show notes as well so everybody can find that. Stephanie, thank you so much for spending some time here with us today.
Thanks for having me, Heather. It's been amazing.
Well, I hope you all enjoyed that just as much as I did. Now, I don't know, right now we know, we're aware, right? We're going to go out throughout our day and we're going to go, "Oh, how could I use this now analogy? How can I what am I sensing about myself?" And I hope that you really stay in touch with that element of yourself, folks, as you move through the day and the weeks ahead. Thank you for being here. We will be back soon with a brand new episode. But for now, this is Heather Vickery reminding you today and every day to go out and choose bravely. Bye. You've been listening to The Brave Files, stories of people living courageously. Visit us at thebravefilespodcast.com to learn more about the show, find our show notes, and access full episode transcripts. And we'd love to know what you think of the show. We invite you to connect with us via Instagram and send a DM. You'll find us at The Brave Files Podcast on Instagram. Our music was created and produced in a custom collaboration with Matt Lewis from ML Creative Consulting, a boutique firm dedicated to helping clients identify their unique sound and amplify their brand with custom-delivered soundtracks. Special thanks to everyone on Team Brave, from our audio engineer to our producers, associate producers, copy editors, writers, and support team. The show wouldn't exist without them, and we are eternally grateful. I'm your host and executive producer, Heather Vickery. Thanks for tuning in.